Hi there, landlords. It's Nicole, your landlord advocate. Today, I want to talk to you about why so many landlords are getting their 30-day notices dismissed. I review lots and lots of decisions on a regular basis, and I speak to about 2 to 3 landlords a day, and they're very, very surprised when they have a 30-day notice in terms of a dispute and they go through a dispute hearing, and then the tenant is rewarded an opportunity to stay on the property. So by and large, I think a lot of the mistakes landlords are making is that they think just by serving the notice itself, they're going to be guaranteed a win. And you really have to have the proper expectation and the proper mindset when it comes to the way that you're approaching your hearing, you're approaching your tenancy, and you're just approaching the whole process itself. So just serving a 30-day notice is not going to guarantee you a win. What really is going to guarantee you a possibility of a win. And of course, I always tell landlords, I never guarantee you a win. I'm here to help you leverage as much as possible with the RTB process and to see how we can position you in order to help you have a very, very good strategy so that there's a possibility of a win. So when you go into a process with a tenant, before you pull into going to serve a 30-day notice, you have to have a plan. And I think that by and far, a lot of the landlords, they just do not have a plan. They don't actually plan out how things are going to go before they actually begin to serve the tenant the 30-day notice. Now, because I've gone through so many decisions on a regular basis, and because I attend at least 2 to 3 hearings a month, and I speak to about 2 to 3 landlords a day, and I hear from them on a regular basis their frustrations. Sometimes you're dealing with an extremely horrible tenant. I had an extremely just a nightmare tenant, and I understand your frustration and the stress that it might cause you, but you can't actually lead with your emotion when it comes to how you're going to approach your tenancy. You have to lead with the act. You have to lead with a strategy, and you have to lead with very, very good documentation. And also, you have to lead with how you're actually creating the environment for an arbitrator to interpret what it is that you're going to be presenting during a hearing. So I'm going to give you 5 pillars. Actually, I have an additional one, 5 pillars to assist you with positioning yourself better so that should you serve a 30-day eviction, more than likely you're going to leverage or have more leverage when it comes to possibility of a win. So once again, a lot of landlords are getting their 30-day eviction disputes dismissed. I'm talking about like the tenant gets to continue the tenancy, the tenant is like being aggressive, they're just being horrible, they're doing whatever they want on the property, etc. They're really interrupting the peace, quiet, and enjoyment of other tenants and neighbors, and on and on and on. And so a lot of landlords, you're like, wait a minute, I thought that this was going to get me an order of possession. And a lot of times the landlords aren't getting an order of possession because they don't have these 5 or more pillars. So number one, in order for you to position yourself to win during a 30-day eviction notice dispute, you have to actually do things and really prepare how you're going to gather evidence before you serve the 30-day. And so these 5 pillars is going to help you when it comes to that. So number one is signed witness statements. So if you're going in and you're talking about a tenant and you don't have multiple different witnesses corroborating your story, more than likely you're just going to be seen as a landlord who just want to get rid of the tenant. So you need to have at least 3 or 4, I would say, witness statements. And if this is uh, gathering statements when it comes to you even having tenants within the property giving you witness statements, and or perhaps even your neighbors giving you witness statements, you want to really have witnesses that is going to corroborate your story around your 30-day eviction notice. Number two, police reports. Usually tenants that are aggressive, they harass other tenants, they have behaviors that are unlawful, and or they just actually don't care about your property, they don't care about you, they don't respect you. They tend to get into this criminal type way to be with how they operate with your tenancy. So it could be that, they don't care about noise at 3 a.m. in the morning and or 4 a.m. in the morning. And so you have to build up your case with ensuring that you're enforcing your rights as a landlord. So if a tenant is acting unlawfully, you should be calling the non-emergency police. And of course, if it is an emergency, you should call 911. So you have to have police reports as corroborating with this awful aggressive tenant as an example. So if you're claiming that the tenant is awful and they're aggressive and they're harassing other people, harassment is something that you should be calling the police about. Anything that is about aggression that might become a criminal activity is something that you should be calling the police about. So oftentimes landlords get into a hearing, they actually have no police reports. Um, and then of course the arbitrators are looking at the whole picture and the story that they're telling, and they're like, okay, so why didn't you get the authorities involved if this tenant was that bad? Okay, number three, warning letters. I can't tell you enough how important it is to have warning letters, because it's going to give the arbitrators an insight into the fact that you have told this tenant what they're doing wrong, why they're doing the things that they're doing wrong, and given them time to fix this behavior, or you'll take this XYZ action, or I'll take legal action. So if you have at least 3 to 4 warning letters over a 3-month period, it's going to act as a very, very effective piece of evidence should you enter into a dispute. And again, most tenants that are being evicted with a 30-day notice, most of them are disputing that notice. Number four, prior notices of eviction. So if, for some reason you have a tenant and you have had or issued a 10-day notice and they paid within that timeline, you still can present that as evidence. Or you've issued a 30-day notice or you've applied for compliance, you can use all of that to back up your statements around you trying to evict the tenant for a 30-day notice. So prior notice of eviction is also really great. And of course, if you read a lot of the decisions, you're going to find there's a theme, like what the arbitrators are looking for. Okay, now picture documentation is also really good. So you should have a journal. If this tenant is very problematic, if they're terrible, if they just will not listen, if they're just an awful tenant, you should be documenting this tenancy. And so having pictures, video documentation, having surveillance around your property, not necessarily interrupting the tenant's personal privacy is also really important for you to show the arbitrator, this is what's happening. In one of the hearings, we showed a tenant stealing something, right? So from a mailbox in a mailroom. So it's a very, very powerful piece of evidence. So if you have picture documentation and you have a series of picture documentation, it's going to act as an extremely powerful leverage when it comes to attempting to show that you have gathered this level of documentation for your 30-day eviction. And then number 6, I'm just going to give you a bonus one. What you can also do is that you can apply for orders of compliance. So if you make an application because the tenant isn't acting in accordance with the act, and you've spoken to the tenant 2 or 3 times, you're not listening, you apply for an order of compliance. And of course, you might get into a facilitation process, or you might get into a dispute hearing process, but that's going to show proof to the arbitrator that you have been doing things in order to assist this tenant to comply with the act. And of course, now it feels like it's out of your hands. You can't do anymore. And therefore, you have to then go to the board to then get the tenant to act in accordance with the act. So I hope that this has been really great in terms of some insights for you. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I usually spend time talking to the landlords, giving them complimentary calls, answering their questions, and so on. So feel free to reach out if you have any questions for me about your tenancy. I'd be happy to assist you. Until next time, talk again real soon. Bye.